أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا حبيب الله العالمين أبا القاسم مصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجهم. Hello everyone and welcome to the 8th week of Tadabbur on the Qur'an. Today we're gonna have the conclusion of Surah Al-Qiyāmah. We had the verses 1 to 35 last week. Today we're gonna have the rest of this chapter and the conclusion of this chapter. Yesterday was the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'minin Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi Allah tahiyyata wa sana, peace be upon him, which is a deep sorrow for all of us. It doesn't matter Shia or Sunni, and I believe even it doesn't matter if you are Muslim or not, because it means that people stood against justice, the real justice, the true justice, and it's very sad and it's a deep sorrow, and this is a deep sadness that although people always talk about justice and they always said that we want someone to lead us, we want to have a perfect leader, but every time during the human history when a perfect human was the leader of our society, people couldn't stand him and they killed all of them. Most of the prophet and all imams, they were killed by human, actually by those people who choose them as their leader. And this is very sad. And I believe that we have to read about the story of our religious leaders, of the prophet and imams, and learn from this, as we're always saying that we are waiting for the end of the history. We are waiting for the Savior to come and lead us. We're always talking about this. And I believe that we have to read the history of the other religious leaders to learn from it, that we are very similar to those people who were waiting for a perfect human, for a good leader, but then they couldn't stand that person. And we have to think about it, as I am waiting for a savior. Am I ready for it or not? Am I ready for the real justice, for the true justice or not? Ali ibn Abi Talib was a perfect human in all aspects of his life. He was the perfect one. He was the first Muslim who accepted the Prophet invitation, and he was the first one always to helping him in jihad, in all of the wars, in helping in the charity, in all of the situation. He was the first helper for the Prophet. And after him, people were not kind with him. They didn't recognize his values. And after so many years, when he returned to him and when he asked him to lead the society, unfortunately, they couldn't stand his justice and his goodness. And again, unfortunately, after him, they didn't took a lesson from whatever that they did, and they repeated over and over and over again for 11 Imam. And now we are waiting for the 12 Imam to come. And during this time, we have to be ready for him, and we have to learn from the history. We have to learn that if we are saying that we are waiting for the Savior, for the 12 Imam, are we really strong enough to be in his team, to be under his leadership or not? So let's get start our study on chapter 75. Today we're not going to have the introduction part, because this part, I think it needs the whole time to cover all of the concepts that we have in it. As we talked last week, this chapter seems to have three paragraphs. The first paragraph is verses 1 to 2. The second paragraph is verses 3 to 35, and the third paragraph is verses 36 to 40. We studied the verses in the first and second paragraphs, And now I prefer to make conclusion for both paragraphs. Then we can start studying the third paragraph and conclusion of the third paragraph. At the end, we can find out the connection between these paragraphs to understand the main goal of this chapter. So let's have the conclusion for the first paragraph. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة. The first paragraph, as we studied it last week, it seems that it's talking about the day of judgment, the day of resurrection. And God said, I do not swear by the day of judgment, and I do not swear by the self-blaming soul. When God said, I do not swear, it means that the topic that I want to emphasize on it is very obvious, and I do not need to swear to prove it or to emphasize on it. It's a very obvious fact. It is very clear, and I don't need to swear to something to prove it. As we saw, the third paragraph is not directly a response for the first and second verse. Based on that, we said that these two verses, the first and second verses, are emphasizing on the rest of this chapter. Okay, and the topic of the rest of this chapter is the day of judgment. God is talking about the human who deny the day of judgment, and God is trying to bring some reason and also warn this person about the day of judgment. So based on that, we can say the main reason that God sent down these two verses is emphasizing on an important fact on the day of judgment. And there was a connection between these two verses, as I explained. The day of judgment is very similar to the self-blaming soul, as we all witness that there is a self-blaming attributes in our soul, and our soul will blame us if we do something wrong, if we make a bad decision. And the day of judgment is very similar to that. In this world, in this life, there is a self-blaming soul inside of us, and it's talking to us, blaming us continuously if we do something wrong. And this is actually a trial, a judgment in this life inside of us. And the day of judgment is very similar to that. And it's on the other life, and it's actually judging everything that we did in our life. So based on that, we can say that the main goal of this paragraph is emphasizing on the main goal of the chapter. These two verses, which are swear, which are actually not swearing, because the topic is very obvious. There is no necessity for proving it. Like having the day of judgment is very obvious. This is very clear, and God provided these two verses to emphasize on the main goal of this chapter. And the main goal of this chapter is the day of judgment. And in these two verses, God said, I do not swear by the day of judgment and the self-blaming soul. These are two similar facts. The system of questioning and trial within each human, and on the other word, the self-blaming soul, obviously proves that there is a trial system in the world of being, the day of judgment. So this was the first paragraph. And the second paragraph is actually, it started with a thought of the human. And God said that does the human assume that we will not assemble his bone? This is not a real question. This is actually telling us that some people have a ridiculous idea, and they believe that God is not able to assemble the bones and to recreate the dead body. As we studied these verses, we can say that the main reason that God sent down these verses was a sickness among societies, even now. What is that sickness? There are some doubts that God is not able to assemble the dead bodies and recreate the dead bodies. And actually, God sent down these verses to answer to this question, or simply say to heal this illness. These are not real question. These are illness. These are sickness. What are those sickness? God provided the roots of this kind of a thought to find out what is the root of this kind of a sickness. They are saying that God is not able to assemble the bones, but this is not the real reason. They are saying it that our reason for rejecting the day of judgment is this, but this is not the real reason. There is something behind that. God told us the root, the first root in the verse fifth, and told us, in fact, the human wants to open everything that is in front of him. God told us this person wants to be free. They are looking for freedom. And as they want to be free from everything, they are denying the day of judgment, and they are bringing this ridiculous reason that God is not able. Of course, God is able, and God answered in the fourth verse and said, yes, we are able to restore even his fingertips without providing any reason. God didn't bring any reason or any proof for his power. Of course, I am able. That is enough for you to know, because God talked about his power on the other chapters. And now, instead of providing some proof for his power, he started talking about the roots. And God told us this person who is bringing this reason, he is sick. And the main reason for rejecting the day of judgment, for denying the day of judgment, is his tendency to freedom. And then God warned him about the other life, that as you are looking for the freedom in this life, you have to know that on the other life, you'll be like a prisoner. In verse 10, God said that you'll be like a prisoner and you will looking for the escape way, and you have to know that there is no refuge for you, there is no escape way for you. You, as a human who loves the freedom, you have to know this temporary freedom that you preferred it, it's gonna cause a permanent prison for you on the other life, and you cannot find any escape way, any refuge on the other life. So this was actually the first route that God provided for us. And then there was a parenthesis in verses 16 to 19 that God talked to the prophet directly and told the prophet that as you receive the verses 1 to 15, don't hurry up to recite it for people. I know that you are very excited and very happy to hear these verses. These are very valuable verses, and you want to go to people and start reciting it for them. But don't hurry up. Don't recite it, because we're gonna send other verses. This is actually a technique, verses 16 to 19 is a technique to bold and highlight the importance of these paragraph and these verses. God is gonna tell us that these are very valuable and important verses, and the prophet was so excited and happy to hear these verses, and he wanted to go to people and recite it for them, and he was like this, oh, these are very valuable verses, and if I tell them about these verses and this stuff, they will gonna believe the day of judgment and this stuff. Now God is bringing that thought in the prophet minds to tell us that it's a very important paragraph. And then he continued the rest of this paragraph. This is actually a technique for bolding this concept. Anyway, the second reason for this sickness among people is provided in the verse 20. It says, كَلَّا بَلْ تُحِبُّونَ الْعَاجِلَةَ. Definitely not. In fact, you, the human, love the fleeting world and neglect the hereafter. This is the second reason. The first reason, or the first root, was actually the tendency to freedom. They want freedom. And the second reason is their love of the temporary life. They prefer the temporary life over the permanent life. To heal this illness, God provided a picture about our life and the other life to warn us. This hereafter, that you are neglecting it, you have to know that on the other life, on that day, you're going to be divided into two groups. The first group, some faces on that day will be cheerful, looking at their Lord. And then the second group, and some faces on that day will be gloomy and they will be sad. So these are two main groups on that life. Do you think that it's okay if you neglect such a permanent life, such a permanent happiness and sadness? This is what you are neglecting it. This is the hereafter. This is the day of judgment. So this is one step to heal this illness. Then the second step is in verses 26 to 30. It's actually a picture of the last moments of our life. Everyone will die one day, and we cannot deny this fact. We all die one day, and those last moment of our life is very painful, and there is no helper for us. No one can help us, and this is a very difficult moment. And God is telling us that this life that you prefer it over the hereafter is like this. And this is the end of you in this life. Do you really think that it's worth to care about such a life? Of course, this is nothing, and you have to be wise and you have to know that the hereafter, which is permanent, is much better than this temporary life. And the end of this temporary life is this is such a painful end. And then after that, in verses 31 to 35, which is kind of it seems that it's a kind of a conversation between those people who are beside the bed of this dead person, or the angels who came to took his soul, or it's just a description from God about the life of this person. Anyway, verses 31 to 35 is a description about the lifestyle of this person who has such a painful end. And it's telling us that this person never believed, he always rejected any good, and he didn't pray, and he denied and turned away, and he was so happy with his choice. And now he deserved to have such a painful end. These verses, verse 3 to 35, actually provided two roots or two reasons to tell us that those people who are denying the day of judgment, they are sick. And although they are saying God is not able to recreate the dead body, this is not their real reason. And God knows that their real reason is two things. First, they're looking for the freedom. Second, they prefer this temporary life, and they love this world, and they neglect the hereafter. These are two main reasons or two roots. And God sent down this paragraph to heal this illness. How? By warning that person that if you are looking for freedom, you have to know that on the other life, you're going to be in the prison. There is no escape way. There is no refuge for you on the other life. So this temporary freedom is nothing compared to a permanent prison. And then he provided a picture about the other life, which this person is neglecting, and also a picture about the last moment of this temporary life, to tell this person that if you are loving this temporary life, you have to know that this is the end of your story. These are steps that God took to heal this kind of illness. And based on that, we can say that the main goal of this paragraph was introducing the real reasons of denying the judgment by deniers and confronting them through proper warning. Deliberate denial of the day of resurrection originates the human's tendency to unconditional freedom. This denial has also rooted in love of the world and neglecting the hereafter in deeper layers. So these were actually the conclusion of the first and second paragraph that we had it last week. Now, if you have any question on this part, you can ask your question. I'm gonna stop the recording for this part. So one of our friends asked that some translation actually translated the first and second verses as I swear by the day of judgment and I swear by the self-blaming soul. Why we are translating it like this and why we are saying I do not swear by the day of judgment. Actually, as I read in the interpretations, some of them believe that law at the beginning of these two verses is za'id, which means these are actually kind of not important and we can just ignore it. God didn't put it on purpose here. We don't believe in this kind of a thought. We do believe that everything in Quran, every word matters, and we cannot accept that there is something za'id in Quran. And if God said la uqsamo, he meant it to say la uqsamo. And la uqsamo is not equal with uqsamo. La is making it negative. And there is a difference between la uqsamo and uqsamo. Uqsamo in many chapters that we had it in the first level, they are actually with wav. Wav at the beginning of a verse in a specific situation means uqsamo. Anyway, there's a difference between la oqsamo and oqsamo. Oqsamo simply means I want to swear on something and I want to emphasize on a concept which is after that, okay? But when God said, I do not swear la oqsamo, there are some reason for it. The first one, the concept that I want to emphasize on it is very important. And for that reason, I don't want to swear because it's very obvious. The other reason, that thing which God is swearing by it, which is maqsum bih, it is actually very important to God, and God doesn't want to have any kind of consequences happen to that thing. For example, لا أقسم بهذا البلد وأنت حل بهذا البلد. I don't want to swear by this sanctuary city, which means Mecca. And the Prophet was settled on that city. And it's important for God to do not swear by it. And also, لا أقسم بمواقع النجوم. I don't want to swear by the actually position of the stars because it's a very huge swear if you know it. And if I swear by it, there will be some consequences by it. So, okay, this is the second reason that God doesn't want to swear to it because that maqsumum bih, that thing that God is swearing by it, is a huge creation and it's important for God, and God doesn't want to actually um, have any consequences for that thing. Uh, the other reason it just escaped from my mind. Anyway, there are some reasons that we believe that do not swear and swear are different. But the point is, the result of both translation is one thing, and that thing is emphasizing on the concept which is after that. Okay? Even when God says that la oqsemo, I do not swear by something, we say that the emphasis on this la oqsemo, I do not swear, is more than the other one, is more than oqsemo. Why? Because on that situation, God is simply saying, I swear by something, but here he's saying, I do not swear because it's very obvious. Actually, there is more emphasis in this situation. Okay, now this is the difference between la oqsamo and oqsamo, but we absolutely prefer I do not swear because this is the translation of la oqsamo. There is no za'id in Quran, and we believe that everything in Quran is on purpose, and God put all of those things on purpose in Quran. So is it clear for you now?
Yes, thank you very much, sister. Thank you.
Of course. Any other question? So let's go to the third paragraph. It says, أَيَحْسَبُ الْإِنسَانُ أَنْ يُتْرَكَ سُدًى. Does the human assume that he is left useless? And يُتْرَكَ سُدًى. It means that the creation of human is useless and we are created with no reason. There is no reason in our creation. And we are just created and God left us here in this world without any target, without any reason. And the end of our story is dead. And when we die, there is nothing after that. It means the creation is useless and God did all of these things with no reason, with no target. This verse 36, is very similar in terms of structure to the verse 3. And it says, أَيَحْسَبُ الْإِنسَانُ أَنْ لَنْ نَجْمَعَ عِظَامَهُ. Does the human assume that we will not assemble his bone? Actually, these two verses bringing two main thoughts in human. In the third verse, human thoughts that God is not able to assemble the dead bodies and recreate the dead bodies, and he was questioning the possibility of the day of judgment. They were questioning that if God is able or not, is it possible to have the day of judgment or not? But verse 36 is actually questioning about the necessity and the wisdom of the day of judgment. They are saying, is it necessary to have the day of judgment? Because it seems that our life is useless and we have a short temporary life in this life, and the end of our story is dead. So I hope that is clear now. These two verses are actually covering two different attributes. One is about the possibility, the other one is about the necessity. About the possibility, God answered briefly that yes, I am able to recreate you, even the fingertips. And then he started warning that person. Instead of bringing proof for his power, God started warning that person, because God told us that this person is sick and his main sickness is, first, looking for the freedom, second, tendency to this temporary life. So God didn't provide any proof for his power on that paragraph. Now we are dealing with the human who is questioning about the necessity and the wisdom of God. He is saying that is it necessary to have the day of judgment? And he's actually kind of a questioning God's wisdom. He believes that there is no wisdom in the creation and our life is useless. Now God is answering this kind of a thought. أَلَمْ يَكُنْ نُطْفَةً مِّن مَّنِيٍّ يُمْنَىٰ. Was he not once a drop of semen emitted? It's actually inviting us to think about the beginning of our life. When God created us, he created us from a drop of semen, which is nothing. And we had that in Surah Al-Tariq in the first level, that God said that you were nothing from the beginning, and I created you once from a drop of water. And now, of course, it's very easy for me to recreate you. If it was difficult for me, the first time should be difficult. But for God, there is no difficulty, and difficult things means nothing. It's our mind that we compare things together and we can say this one is simple, the other one is difficult. This is our limited mind that we think about stuff like this. But for God, it means nothing. There is no difficult or easy. And I created you the first time from a drop of semen, and of course, I am able to recreate you and assemble your bone. ثم كان علقة فخلق فسوى. That drop of semen, then he became a clinging clot. The clinging clot is alaq, which is actually alaqa or alaq, which is actually the one of the first step of the fetus development. And it is described as alaq or alaqa in Qur'an, or a clinging clot, because it has a very unstable situation, and that's why it's described as alaq. So he created him. God created him. So he proportioned him. These are actually kind of saying different steps of creating. As I explained in the first level, خلق فسوى means خلق means creating the general situation of the body, and sawa means proportionate. Just as an example, for example, if someone wants to make a door, that door, creating that, actually, like cutting the whole wood and making it in a shape of a door, is creating it. That is the first step. And when that person is trying to make it accurate, with accurate dimensions, and to fit it in that frame, it means proportionate. فسوى and خلق has this kind of differences. So these two verses are describing different steps of fetus development and human creation. فجعل منه الزوجين الذكر والأنثى. And from that drop of semen, God made from that thing both genders, the male and the female, which means the wisdom behind all of this creation. It's not only one gender, then actually the next generation will have some kind of a problem. There wouldn't be any newborn baby and stuff like this. It means that there is a perfect plan and there is a huge wisdom behind all of this creation. God created you from nothing, from a drop of semen. Then He proportioned you. Then He made both genders, the male and the female, from that. And of course, أليس ذلك بقادر على أن يحيي الموتى? And of course, He is able to recreate you again. Isn't it that Creator able to give life to the dead? Of course, He is able. So as you see these verses, which is very interesting, verses 37 to 40, these four verses are providing enough proof for the third verse, which was questioning the God's power and possibility of the recreation or resurrection. And on the other side, it's providing good reason for the wisdom to prove us that this life is not useless and your life is not useless. The end of your story is not death. God did all of these things, all of these huge steps, and there is a huge wisdom behind this creation. And of course, there is a goal behind that. God did not took all of these steps, all of these huge actually steps to create you only for this temporary life. These four verses bringing enough proof to actually answer both questions, possibility and necessity of the day of judgment. Um, Based on these verses, we can say that the reason that God sent down these verses was doubts about the necessity of the hereafter, and people were questioning about God's wisdom, and they were like this, it seems that our life is only this short life. We're not gonna have another life on the other life. We're gonna be here only in a short time, and we have to enjoy everything that is here. And it seems that there is no specific purpose in our actually creation. And so God sent down these verses to answer these kind of thoughts and tell them that this is a wrong ideology. You have to know that there is a wisdom behind your creation, and this huge creation, of course, is not targetless, and there's a target behind it, and you will be judged one day on the other life. And it also provide good reason for God's power. And based on that, we can say that the third paragraph, the main goal in third paragraph, is proving the wisdom in the human creation and God's ability to recreate the dead bodies. Different stages in the human creation implies wisdom in His creation, and without resurrection, this wisdom will be meaningless and useless. The human creation proves not only God's wisdom, but also His ability to revive the dead. So this was the conclusion of the third paragraph. Based on these three paragraphs, we can understand the main goal of this chapter now. In the first paragraph, there was emphasis on the main goal of this chapter. God said, I do not swear by the day of judgment, and I do not swear by the self-blaming soul. These two not swearing, which, as I explained, these are actually a deep emphasis. These are actually emphasizing on the whole chapter, and these are like the title for the chapter. These are emphasizing on the main goal of this chapter. And then second paragraph was introducing the real reasons of denying the judgment by deniers and confronting them through proper warning. God told us the main reasons that people deny the day of judgment. Their main reason is not their doubts about God's power. They're actually sick and they are looking for unconditional freedom. And also, they love this temporary life. That's why they are denying the day of judgment. They want to be free from all of the God's law. And then the third paragraph was proving the wisdom in the human creation and God's power to revive the dead, to tell us that, of course, there is a reason for creating all of you. There is a target in creating you. And of course, the end of your story is not dead, and God is able to recreate you as He was able to create you from the first time, in the first time. Based on these three paragraphs, we can say that the main goal of chapter 75 was opposition to denial of the day of resurrection in two layers, including tendency and ideology. So it was actually confronting the deniers, and he was telling us about the day of judgment, and God was trying to confront them in two layers: tendency and ideology. What was their tendency? They were looking for the unconditional freedom, and also they loved the temporary life. That was their tendency. What was their ideology? God is not able to recreate us, and also there is no reason to recreating us. God's wisdom. So God answered both of this in terms of a tendency and in terms of ideology. For a tendency, God warned them and told them, if you like freedom, you have to know that this temporary freedom is nothing compared to a permanent prison. Also, if you like this temporary life, you have to know that the end of this temporary life is very painful, and He provided that picture of the last moment of our life, and also a picture from our life on the other side when we are divided into two groups. And then he also answered the questions in terms of ideology. And he told us that I am able to recreate your fingertips, and I am able to recreate you in the same way that I was able to create you in the first time. And also, there is a reason in your creation. And we can say that this this chapter in total was introducing the main reason of denying the resurrection and warning deniers, as well as proving the necessity of the resurrection and ability of Almighty God to accomplish it. Now we have a really nice picture of this chapter in our mind. Before doing Tadabbur, before dividing it into different paragraphs and finding out the actually main goal of each paragraph and then making the conclusion for this chapter, before all of these steps, this chapter was just several verses that we couldn't find the connection between them, and it was difficult for us to follow all of it. Now, when we divided it into different paragraphs and making conclusion for each part and then the connection between those paragraphs, we can have a nice picture in our mind about this chapter. And now we can explain it for our friends that we learned in this chapter that God is trying to talk to those people who denied the day of judgment, and God provided us the main reasons that they are denying the day of judgment, and he warned this kind of a people in these steps, and then he provided enough proofs for his power and also his wisdom. This was the actually main goal of this chapter. Now let's listen to the recitation of this chapter, then we can talk about your questions if you have any questions.